The Chicago Bears completed their top 30 meeting with Caleb Williams yesterday and was at the last and final step that the Chicago Bears needed to complete before deciding on drafting Caleb Williams number 1 overall. We're going to talk about how that meeting went and a surprising thing that came out of that meeting as well. We're also going to talk about Odunze coming into town for his top 30 meeting with the Chicago Bears today. All that plus players that the Bears could target if they do trade down from number 9. We'll talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. So Caleb Williams completed his top 30 meeting with Chicago Bears. Reportedly, he was in town the last 2 days, actually, to experience Chicago, meet with people, sit down. The medicals were a part of that as well. Also got to experience the cold weather because it snowed, surprisingly, over that time as well. So bad to where a White Sox-Braves game got canceled on top of that. So Caleb Williams got to see everything that Chicago had to offer, and hopefully Chicago got to see everything as well that Caleb Williams had to offer. Now, while top 30 visits, they aren't officially allowed to work out in those top 30 visits, so that did not happen. But he did get to have dinner with Bears players, reportedly. So he got to sit down, having dinner with players. And so that's an important step, right? When you look at the fact of how well-liked Justin Fields was by the locker room, right? Talk about the things and the fan base and all that a different day, but the players did respect Justin Fields here. And if Caleb Williams is going to come in and be the new quarterback for the Chicago Bears, he is going to have to earn the respect of those players. Now, hopefully that happens mainly through what happens on the football field, of course, but going through OTAs, going through practices is going to be an important part of that. So reportedly, DJ Moore, Tyreek Stevenson were part of that dinner as well. And then they say players like Tevin Jenkins, Cole Kmet that were in Chicago because of the opening at Wrigley Field may have been part of that dinner as well. No strict confirmation on that, not from what I read as of this recording, something that may have come out before after this recording. But, so that's what it comes down to, man. And I think the Bears, we've already talked about how they've set up Caleb for success, right? With the way that they've improved the team, bringing in the offensive staff that they have brought in here. Still need to make some improvements on that offensive line, which may come via the draft, but I think they've done a pretty damn good job. And so, getting to meet with Caleb, important part of that process, Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren have all talked about it. With players that they bring in here, it's about the character of the person as well. And I know there are already going to be some people getting to typing in their feelings about pink phones and painted fingernails and all of that, but the character of a person, right? And so, I get it. There are a lot of legitimate critiques, both on the football field and other things as far as around Caleb Williams, but it seems like Ryan Poles and the staff has been set in doing that. Reportedly, that this is going to be the only top 30 visit that Caleb Williams does as well, which kind of points towards, everybody's kind of all on board with that's what's happening. Caleb Williams will more than likely be the next quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And hey, it is what it is, man. And hopefully that meeting with the Bears players went extremely well, because that's the part that I really want to see. Besides the medical evaluation, which if something was going to be there, that probably would have come out by now. But outside of that, and get to see him develop on the football field and how this coaching staff is going to work with him, because there are some concerns about Caleb Williams' game, right? Sometimes he does gamble too much. The fumbles at times, right? Things like that. Those are the type of things but that's the point of coaching. It's not expected, and even though some Bears fans hold that unrealistic expectation for Caleb Williams to come in here and be the polished product that he's going to be right away, there could be taking some time. Even with C.J. Stroud's season that he had last year, best believe there's still things that they need to polish on his game. So, we'll see how that plays off for Caleb Williams, and hopefully he's really ingratiated himself with the Chicago Bears players as well, because he's going to need those guys. Those guys are going to have his back out there, and they're going to have to trust him, and he's going to have to learn where and how they like the ball and things like that. So, good step there. Chicago Bears completed that top 30 visit with Caleb Williams. Just another hurdle, and possibly, and more than likely, the last hurdle that they need to decide in just 3 weeks now until the draft goes down. Caleb Williams' name probably going to be called number 1 overall by the Chicago Bears. Now, another player that a lot of Bears fans, me included, do hope that the Bears also call their name at the NFL draft is Rome Odunze, who is scheduled to have his top 30 visit with the Chicago Bears today. They're hosting him for a top 30 visit. This one comes via NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. So, Odunze is one of the top 3 receivers in this draft that that are expected to all go. And in most drafts, I think yes, to me, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the clear generational prospect out of that. Right, I want to be clear in that. But in a lot of drafts, Rome Odunze would have been the number 1 wide receiver off the board. That's the level of talent that Rome Odunze still has, even compared to Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. He still is a guy that is a hugely important prospect and could turn into a game changer. And so, when it comes down to it, a lot of mocks do have Rome coming to the Chicago Bears, and I do hope that that's the case because then you pair your young rookie quarterback with another young rookie wide receiver who's not going to be asked to do a whole hell of a lot with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen out there, right? Not to say that he's not going to be asked to do a lot, but he's going to have time to naturally progress his game. And then you could have a duo of a 1-2 punch and quarterback and wide receiver that get to grow and hopefully mature and have the majority of their careers together. So, that's, of course, a hope to that. There is a real chance that Rome does fall to the Chicago Bears. You look at teams trading up to try to take quarterbacks. Quarterbacks could go in the top 4 or at least 4 out of the top 5 picks, and that could leave a quarterback or somebody I wouldn't mind either, Joe Alt, falling to the Chicago Bears there at number 9. And so Rome, we'll see how his top 30 visit goes. Probably won't have an update on it today. There may be on tomorrow's daily episode where we kind of break down how that went reportedly, how if he got to meet with other players and things like that. But really good. Bears completed their 2 of their top 30 visits with Caleb Williams. That concluded yesterday, and then they have Rome Odunze coming in today. Now, while Rome Odunze is who the Bears could be selecting at number 9, there's still a lot of question on would the Bears trade down at number 9, depending on what they're offered by other players. And I think they're come down to if the Bears do trade at number 9, there are a handful of players that I think if you trade down, you have to make sure you pick up one of these players. And of course, the first one's Jared Verse. This guy who's been on my list as a defensive end for a while. I've had him on my list for so long. So if you do trade down, I hope that you can still get a player like Jared Verse. He could come in, develop next to on the opposite side of Montez Sweat. I think you do a lot with that. Next up is another wide receiver prospect. That's Brian Thomas. Now, it's a lot of different areas that he can go in the draft, so it would depend upon how far you trade down at. Now, let's make no mistake about it. Brian Thomas is not up there with the Rome Odunzes, Malik Neighbors. He's not up there with them, but he's still a pretty damn good prospect. When you look at it, 6'3", 209 pounds, 68 receptions last year for 1,177 yards and 17 touchdowns. This guy is still a guy that, again, if you get him, of course, he's not at the same level as the other top prospects, but he's still a guy that you can very well get. And he's slated in a lot of mocks to go between like 12 and 15, maybe even as low as 17 or 18. So if the Bears are trading down that far, that would probably mean they're going to get a nice amount of picks back in that as well. So again, but Brian Thomas, I'm not saying you should trade back for him, but if you do trade back, you can still get him. I think you still added a nice wide receiver as your third wideout, in my opinion. So, that's how I feel. 4th wide receiver on the board, still a number 1 overall. I mean, a first round pick. I think he's definitely somebody that you can look at as well. Next up is a defensive tackle, Byron Murphy, out of Texas. This is another guy who, we need that 3 tech. The Bears may feel confident as far as Javon Dexter being on that. He's 6'7". He weighs 297 pounds. And listen, he is a monster. He can still ball out. He ran at 4.8740 at 300 pounds. That's top 9%. This guy can absolutely ball. And, we know that we need some depth at that line. 8 sacks, 15 tackles for a loss. I think that's a guy that we could use on our defensive line, even if Javon Dexter does start. Again, Andrew Billings is a veteran. He could eventually, retire and move on, and then we can look at some other things there. Next up is a guy that is on a lot of people's boards as well. Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, the tackle there. We know we need some depth on that offensive line. He could bring that. I've talked about him, 6'6", a 34 wingspan and things like that. The guy can ball. That's just is what it is. He can ball. He can absolutely help out on that offensive line where we need some extra depth. He can even push Braxton Jones for that starting position right away. And I really like the guy as well and how you have. Another guy that I think is Chop Robinson. It's a guy who top 30 visit, confirmed already for the Chicago Bears. That he blew up at the draft combine. Now, where he's going to go has been determined by a lot of it's a lot of flexibility in where people expect him to go. But at the end of the day, I think that if you do trade down, you get the right the draft selection. He's probably selected to go more towards the end of the first round, maybe even is the beginning of the second round. But I like Chop Robinson as that edge, 6'3", 254 pounds. The numbers from last season don't necessarily jump out at you, but he's another guy that I think the Bears should definitely look at if they do trade back at that number 9 position. That's not a full list. There are other players as well that you absolutely can, and the Bears should look at if they do trade back from number 9. But those are kind of the guys that I have kind of on my list for sure right now. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other prospects that the Bears do look at. But I kind of think, and I'm leaning towards, it seems like, from what we're hearing, what we've seen with top 30 visits, things like that the Bears may be keeping that number 9 pick. And I know that's going to frustrate some Bears fans that really want to see the Bears go out there and trade to get more draft picks, get more stock in this. But it really comes down to just getting the right guys, not necessarily a number, but getting the right guys. And I think that's the most important thing to look at there. Now, if he does trade back and is able to get multiple picks to where you can load up your offensive line and still get one of those players that I mentioned later in the first round, I mean, that'd be Ryan Poles doing what Ryan Poles does best, and that's cook, right? So I wouldn't be mad at that, but ultimately, I just think you got to look at and evaluate the talent that's there and ask yourself, how much better are you really getting in that by even trading down? But that's not a question that I have to answer, thank God. That's a question that Ryan Poles has to answer with his evaluation of what he's going to do. But let me know what you guys think on all that down below, man. I appreciate you guys so much for everything that you guys have continued to support us on going through this. And I think that we're in for a fun draft for the Chicago Bears, man. But make sure you guys are following the show at Chi Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end everything on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.